Hello and welcome to this presentation on Oracle Migration Made Easy. My name is Matt Lewandowski. I'm a Senior Product Manager here at EDB, and I'm going to talk to you about how EDB can help you migrate from Oracle to Postgres. Today's agenda, first give you some background information on why you might be leaving Oracle and some factors to consider around all that, why make the move to Postgres, and why choose EDB for that move. I won't dwell too much on that on the background information, but I feel it's good to set the context. I will also describe how EDB can help with migrations. We'll talk about our compatibility with Oracle, the deployment options that we provide, and then get into the migration tools and services. And then we'll take a little break and do a demo of doing a migration using some of our tools. And then we'll follow up with some discussion on considerations around post-migration environment, and then wrap it up with some discussions about best practices and resources. So again, thanks for participating in this presentation, and let's just get into it. First, when you think about leaving Oracle, why would you want to leave Oracle? It's a great database, has a lot of great capability, but organizations more and more are desiring to get off of it. And for the most part, the reason is about price and their business practices. They sort of go hand in hand. It's a great technology, but it comes at a high cost. And in today's environment, businesses are trying to save money and then to spend their money wisely in other areas. And so this is a big motivator for getting off of Oracle. Along with the price comes their business practices. They're very aggressive in trying to increase the amount of licenses that you have to pay for. So that is a source of frustration for many customers. And those two things are by far the biggest driver. This is what we see in our surveys and our conversations with customers. But there are technical reasons, deployment flexibility, also somewhat tied in with licensing. They want to be able to deploy Oracle in different environments that maybe aren't today really geared for Oracle. And they're looking for options where they can different database technologies that would satisfy that need. Also, when you think about agility and innovation, there's more modern ways of working with databases and such, and organizations are choosing to move off of Oracle for that reason. And then if you think about over the years, organizations have built up a set of applications that use different databases under the covers. And when they do that, they end up having to spend money on multiple different types of databases, on upkeeping them and maintaining them. And so in order to consolidate the spending to a smaller set, they're looking to remove some of those databases that they're using today out of their environment. And so oftentimes that's a reason why organizations are looking to take the highest priced database out of their equation and move to something cheaper, and also do some consolidation at the same time. So why doesn't everybody just do it? Well, frankly, migrations can be hard. Even though some migrations may be technically not that difficult, sometimes they're difficult from a business perspective. You may have highly critical applications that are important to the business, and you need to factor in that you might need some downtime, or you might need to carefully plan for how you'll migrate the application so that it doesn't disrupt the business. Also, your organization has probably built up Oracle skills, and it's difficult to sort of walk away from that. Also, the people that are managing your system, they have their Oracle skills, and they could be a little bit concerned about moving forward with something that they don't know as well. So that sometimes causes a little inertia in the ability to move for an organization from Oracle to something else. As we mentioned before, Oracle has some aggressive business practices. They often have led to troublesome contracts. Sometimes those are a little bit hard to unwind. And the sooner you think about when your licenses expire and start planning for that day is probably it would be a good recommendation, I would say. And then there will be applications that are specifically designed for Oracle. They're not only designed for it, but they're only supported on Oracle. And you have to make some decisions on whether you need to look for an alternative to those applications chances are you won't be able to migrate those. Those may be critical to your business, so you may still need to keep some Oracle applications or look for some other alternatives out there. So Postgres is more and more is becoming the database of choice when moving off of Oracle because it offers a lot of the same sort of capability built on the same foundational principles that Oracle, SQL Server, and databases like that. It supports a wide range of applications and use cases. It can support system of record databases, system of engagement, system of analysis. It supports a slew of modern data types that modern applications want to use. And I think importantly, the community that develops Postgres is a strong community. And I would say that it is a success story for open source. And it's a community that's not dominated by any one vendor, but it has a lot of different vendors supporting it and helping it move it along. Um, it, the community is really focused on performance and security and reliability. And as we produce new releases every year, we're introducing new features that improve its use in the enterprises. And for this reason, organizations are choosing Postgres. Now, EDB is a vendor of Postgres. Why would you go with EDB to help you with your migrations from Oracle to Postgres? We've been at the game for 15 years, basically, over 15 years. We've been in business since 2004. We've been helping customers migrate off of Oracle to Postgres. That was sort of how we started our business, is to provide those capabilities. Over the years, we have developed and been recognized for our 24/7 support of Postgres at any scale. We provide a comprehensive set of migration tools and services. And then we have a version of Postgres, our advanced server database, that has deep compatibility with Oracle. And this makes moving from Oracle to Postgres much easier. So let's dig into how we actually support you. Before we do that, let's think about what you're actually moving when you're moving a database. You're going to be moving the schemas. That's the storage objects, your tables and index and such in the database. And you'll also be moving database code, procedures, triggers, functions, packages. Those that are created in Oracle have different syntaxes associated with them. So when you're moving to a database like Postgres, you'll have to either have the database support those syntaxes, or you'll have to do some conversion. So that's one thing you need to be concerned about. Then there's the data that exists in that database. Depending on the size of your database and your uptime requirements, I should say, you may have different options of how you want to do that. That could be done in a bulk or a snapshot fashion, or you might want to do it in an ongoing fashion where you keep the Oracle application running and receiving writes, but you want to be able to stream those changes to the Postgres database as you continue with your migration efforts. And then also setting up fallback positions as you prepare to do the actual cutover. You might want to have a fallback back to Oracle just in case something, some issue arises as you're going through the migration. And then you need tools to help you with all that. Some things that folks often overlook is that you're also oftentimes looking at doing a migration in conjunction with changes of where you're hosting your databases and your applications. So you need to think about, are you today on-prem and you want to move to the cloud? Do you have those options available to you? You also have probably built up your application over a lot of years and optimized your systems to work with the application and the database. You'll have to do similar things whenever you do the migration to Postgres. And then you'll need to factor into all your non-functional requirements, your high availability, security, and encryption. And then finally, you're moving the databases. You're probably also moving the application, but the application is what using the underlying database. And there may be changes that you need to introduce into the application to support that. One, to connect to the database, but also to query and interact with it. There may be some changes to the syntax that's used in there. And also there might be an opportunity to refactor your application to take advantage of other performance features and things like that. So those are all factors when we think about migrating a database that we need to consider. we asked that, our customers a few years ago, what they saw as the biggest obstacles when migrating from Oracle to Postgres. And for the most part, although cost was in the mix there, it was a small wedge compared to the rest of them. If you look at the orange on the left-hand side, it's about 38%. That's for migrating the data. And then the two wedges on the right-hand side are about migrating the data definitions and the stored procedures. That's that part, the schema that I talked about. It's about equal to the orange wedge on the side if you combine those two. And then, of course, moving the application itself. So you think about that. Even though cost was an issue for a reason why they're moving off of Oracle, it's these challenges here that they're concerned about. And rest assured, EDB, with the cost that we provide our advanced server database at, as well as the capabilities that we provide, we can help you overcome these obstacles. So we think about a migration, what makes up a successful migration. First of all, we're going to be doing a migration. Almost all of them will be undertaken in 3 stages. There's some sort of assessment that's done where you analyze the feasibility of moving or migrate your applications, and then you'll actually execute on that, doing your database migration and also your application migration. To complete those 3 stages, you need a comprehensive set of migration capabilities. We provide that in the form of database compatibility with Oracle, also multiple deployment options so that you have some flexibility of where you actually deploy your Postgres database, as well as tools and expertise to help you with the migration. So the first of those is compatibility with Oracle. We look at compatibility at EDB uh, uh, in a broad way, not just with moving the schema and the data. There are some vendors and options out there that can help you with that. There's others that will get you further along with the code and the API as well. We also consider that you need to run your database in the end in an operating environment, and you need to have the tools and capabilities that can be used in that environment. EDB is the only vendor that supports you across the board there. Our compatibility with Oracle is wide and deep, so we've looked at trying to provide compatibility features that meet different needs in the migration process there, including the Oracle support for Oracle data types and object types, as well as PL SQL. Probably this is the biggest factor, PL SQL, is that many applications and the underlying database uses a lot of stored procedures and triggers and packages that are built in Oracle PL SQL. And we have built a version of PL SQL natively in the advanced server version of Postgres. So that's really important that those become objects that you don't need to worry about trying to convert, because they will work in many cases just out of the box, if you would, in advanced server. We also provide compatibility for some Oracle query syntax, as well as provide things like data dictionary views and built-in PL SQL packages that you may have leveraged in your Oracle database. Also, we support database drivers that have compatibility features so that there's less work that needs to be done to convert your application. And then we also have tools that will help leverage some of the existing utilities that you've built for managing your Oracle database. In the end, the benefit of all this compatibility is that it can significantly reduce the amount of time and effort for you to migrate from Oracle to Postgres. You'll just simply have less schema and code that will need to be converted or rewritten. And also with our worker-like tools and some of the other features there, you have familiar constructs and capabilities that your DBAs and developers can use. So that just eases the transition for them as well. To reemphasize some of the importance of the compatibility, we have a tool that I'll preview a little bit later called Migration Portal. In that, you can upload schemas from Oracle and get an assessment of that, how compatible it is. And what we saw with the queries of that last year for 2 years running, that they're over 32% of those schemas. And again, there was 18 million DDL constructs in the schemas that were uploaded. Of those, 32% of those have database Oracle database packages that in use, and we just handle that natively within Advanced Server. Also, there's some other features that an Oracle database like pragmatic autonomous transaction that doesn't exist in core Postgres, and also would be hard to implement in a good way that we have implemented in Advanced Server. And again, that is just something that works out of the box. And 14% of schemas also have hints, also something that points to the query syntax, that we are able to support some of the things that Oracle provides beyond just the SQL standard itself. All these uh, capabilities basically address the practical challenges that you may face in a migration. We also have a compatible set of drivers. Don't want to dwell on this too much, but basically we extend the community drivers with capabilities that Oracle applications may have been using. And this is just a sampling of some of those. And you can see how broadly we actually support these. So in the end, the benefits of compatibility are to your business. It lowers the cost and reduces the risk of doing a migration and using the Postgres database in the end. And then also reduces risk for your people, that they can leverage their existing skills and transition to Postgres. And also it benefits your applications in that especially if you have PL SQL heavy database application, or are using Oracle call interface in your applications, then you can move those applications and those databases easier with less rewrite. So the next thing to factor or element of a successful migration is having deployment options available to you. We at EDB support running Postgres, um, both the standard Postgres distribution, as well as ADB's Advanced Server on premise, in containers, via Kubernetes operators, also in the public cloud, in a self-managed way, or an infrastructure as a service where you set up the instances in the cloud and you manage all the database and the tools around it yourself, or as a managed service provided by us called Big Animal. And that is available in both Amazon as well as in Azure. And more and more customers are considering a move to the cloud. And so you have options when going to the cloud. Let's focus on just a little bit more. With our Big Animal service, you do get the option of deploying either Postgres or Advanced Server database. The Advanced Server database provides that Oracle compatibility that is helps make migrations easier. Know that the Big Animal service is built and backed by Postgres experts, and also um, with being a service, a managed service in the cloud, you have some, as a service, it just has a lot of high availability built into it. But we're also introducing uh, more features in this area to offer extreme high availability. And some of that's going to be coming over the course of this year. So we're really excited about having this Big Animal offering for you as a deployment option. So covering those first two topics, now let's look at migration tools and services that we offer. Uh, if you remember, we had the three main stages. If you look at the three main stages of a migration, it basically breaks down into these 9 steps: a decision to migrate, to analyzing your feasibility, planning the migration, and then the next step is to actually move the database. That's the schema and the code in the database, as well as the actual data that resides in the database. And then migrating your applications, that's your interfaces, but it's also the reports and management tools as well. And then finally, at the end of all that, although you may have been doing some testing along the way, you'll want to do more formal tests of validating your data, and validating the performance of your application, validating the functionality of your application, as well as your database. And then with that information to inform you, you can optimize your system, and then you can also finish setting up the environment so that it meets all the non-functional requirements like high availability and security. And then you've got a system that's ready to be used. And before you finish actually move the whole migration, you'll probably set up a fallback position, and you'll need tools to support that. And when you're ready to do the cutover, you'll have assurance that the data has been moved properly and that the application is running fine. And when you make that cutover, then you can dispense of that fallback position. Anyways, well, the tools and services we provide basically cover this whole 9-step journey. Let's first tool in the journey that we would most of our customers will start with is the migration portal. It's a free to use tool, with a EDB website account, and you can upload a schema into that and get an assessment of how compatible your database schema is with the advanced server. It is a tool that we use the information that gets uploaded into the system. We're able to both improve our advanced server database, but also improve our migration capabilities. Migration Toolkit is another tool that it can do a lot of different things. It's sort of a Swiss Army knife of tools, but primarily in the context of an Oracle migration, what it's used for is to do snapshot data migrations. And it's does have options to do other things, as I mentioned. It is a tool that does require an EDB subscription to use beyond the trial period. And it's something that can be installed in your own environment. Replication server is another tool that can be installed in your environment. And we, in the context of migrations, it is used to do the ongoing or continuous migrations through change data capture. So you can do migration from Oracle to Postgres and back from Postgres to Oracle. So in that case where you have that fallback position you want to set up, you can set it up in that configuration as well. It offers both the command line interface, but also a graphical user interface as well. And the primary use, again, for this is to do that continuous or the change data capture based data migration. And after you've moved your data, we have a tool called Live Compare that was built for our Postgres distributed, or what some of you may know as BDR. It was built initially for that, but it's a great tool to be used in the context of migrations, in that it can check the contents of an Oracle database and then check the contents of a Postgres database and make sure that the data is consistent between the two. And we mentioned that we have database connectors. So we build upon the community drivers for Java and ODBC and .NET, and we extend those with Oracle compatible features. We also offer our own version of an Oracle call interface called Oracle call library that can be used to migrate applications that are OCI based. We also offer ECGB plus as options. Using these drivers will allow you to use more of your code as is, changing the connection strings. And in a lot of cases, the code that you've written for the Oracle application, then in the application will continue to work. There may be still some tweaks you need to make, but it will certainly reduce the amount of effort to move the application. Then there's a set of other tools to support some more specialized data migrations. And also to support you in Postgres testing and management. And then I mentioned that there's tools to support you that are worker-like tools to Oracle SQL Plus, as well as Oracle SQL Loaders. Those are two tools that are important for DBAs and developers in loading data and writing reports and managing the database. Those worker-like tools can be used to sort of ease the transition from Oracle to Postgres. And then rounding out discussion on our tools and services, we need to just briefly discuss why you would even want to go with us for professional services. Well, quite frankly, just although some migrations are easy and can be done by most organizations on their own, there's quite a few others that are going to be more complex and they're going to require an expert. We at EDB have had over 15 years of experience in helping customers, so we can help you with your complex situations. Also, some staff organizations just simply don't have the staff to move forward with the migration on their own, and we can augment your staff in that regard. I think also what's important when you're doing a migration, if you're moving to Postgres, you need to have some sort of Postgres expertise, because that's going to be important to understand, like, what are the differences between Oracle and Postgres and how do I implement something in Postgres. And if you don't have that expertise, that's an area that we can help with. And what we're seeing as we engage with larger enterprises, that they're looking at moving whole sets of applications and doing the analysis and prioritization and planning for that a large scale migration. Oftentimes, it's beneficial to call on somebody like us to help you plan that. So rounding it out, here's if you remember the 9 steps, the last 8. Here's just a sampling of all the different tools and services we offer. I'm not going to dwell on each of these. I covered most of this in the previous discussion there. If you have access to this presentation later, you can certainly dig into this. So with that in mind, let's do a demo. Before we do, just what I'm going to cover, I'm going to just briefly go over some tricky constructs in Oracle, just so you see that those will just be covered through our compatibility. We'll also do a demo of using the migration portal to assess your schema and then move it to a database. I'll be targeting a big animal database. We use the migration toolkit to migrate the data from Oracle to Postgres, and then use Live Compare to actually validate the data. And if time allows, I'll do a demo of, or I'll demonstrate using pgadmin to look at the contents of the database. So let's first inspect our Oracle database. You can see that I have a database here. It's based off of the HR database, which is a standard sample database that Oracle offers. We've extended it to include some constructs that would be exercise our compatibility. First of all, you see just a set of tables here on the left-hand side of the navigator. There's a set of views. If we just look at like one of these here, you'll notice that there's a Oracle syntax for using outer joins that includes the plus symbol. This isn't standard SQL. This would be something you would have to rewrite, but with our advanced server edition, it'll work within there. We'll translate that for you automatically. There's also Oracle has a convention for doing hierarchical queries, which is often important for queries of organizational information or hierarchical kinds of information that uses a keyword start with and connect by. It's something that, again, our advanced server database can handle out of the box automatically. And then there's a few other items that we can review perhaps in the migration portal when we look at it. And you'll notice that we also offer packages. The packages themselves is a concept that's not available in Postgres. It's something that we've implemented. There's also in triggers, in advanced server, we can create triggers in an Oracle-like way and not the Postgres-like way. And again, we understand the PL SQL. So you'll see that whenever I move this into migration portal, these will automatically convert. I want to point out that this Pragma Autonomous, again, was an item that often we see in schemas being used in our stored procedures and code. And this will just get covered automatically by advanced server. So that's just a few highlights of things that'll just happen automatically whenever we do the migration. So here's a view of the migration portal. I've already logged in with my credentials. I'll start a new project. I'm going to set some settings here. I have an Oracle 18c database with that HR plus schema. I'm going to migrate to an advanced server 14 database. And then I'm going to upload a file that I'd already extracted using our extractor tool. The Oracle Data Pump utilities are also supported, so you can extract the DDL, that's the definitions of the tables and the procedures and such. You extract that into the migration portal. And I'll do that. In a minute, it'll come back with results here. All right, so this schema file was uploaded, and you can see that it had 55 objects in it. Right now, it's sitting at 98% compatible. It does list one item that's failed, and you'll notice that there was 37 items that were system repaired. So we have built into the migration portal, when we review the schema as it's uploaded, we can do automatic repairs of things that are um, repairable in an automated way, and also 17 that passed without needing any sort of conversion whatsoever. And I looked at the details. You can see a breakdown by the object type. You can see that there was a view that had an issue in it. If I click on that and move to the left-hand side here, this plan commission view has an error in it. And the reason is that the round function needs to have the second parameter here needs to be an int. And we actually have in our knowledge base that's available in the migration portal a description of that issue. So you can see what the workaround is that I could cast it as an int, or I could also alternatively just get rid of the dot and the 0 on the number there. But let me just follow the recommendation here. And then I make that change and reassess and refresh the tree. And you can see that now that's is successful. If I look again at my results, I can see that I'm 100% compatible at this point. So I'm ready to migrate. There is also the option of being able to run a report. If you did have incompatibilities, they would show up here. But this gives you a breakdown of the issues that were handled automatically, any issues that remain. So let's actually migrate this database. I'm going to choose a database that I have running in the cloud. I'm running it in Big Animal, and I've already set up that Big Animal database. And now it's just a matter of setting up the connections strings here. I'm going to get the host name from Big Animal, plug it here, and then provide the usernames and passwords that I want to connect with this. And test that. And you can see that that connection was successful. So from my migration portal, I'm able to connect to my Big Animal database. Then when I hit next, it'll actually perform the migration of the schema. At this point, it's not moving the data. All it's moving is the data definition. So you'll have the tables will be created, and your views will be created, and your triggers and procedures and such of that nature will be created. And we can do a quick look at the results of that. And we can see that there was 55 objects, and all 55 of those moved over, and you can see more details above in the log there. So at this point, we are done with the migration portal. Let's actually move the data. And we're going to use a tool called Migration Toolkit for that. Just going to scroll through my commands here. So it's, as I mentioned in one of my slides, it is a command line tool. Has some different options associated with this. So what we're going to do here is do a data only load, and we're going to, if there's any data there or any indexes or constraints we need to disable, this will take care of that for us. Connects to Oracle, connecting to the target database, and it's moving the data at this point. See that there's 8 tables, all were successful in the move. We can actually validate that then using our live compare tool. There's also another command line tool. Again, this connects to Oracle, this connects to the Postgres database and does a comparison, and then it logs the results both in the database that you might set up to collect the information, but also into log files. So we have a log file here. And you can see that there was 8 tables, and the number of rows that exist in those tables, the number of rows that were processed, and that there was no differences. So we had a successful migration at this point. Let's pull up pgadmin and just inspect this. You can see now that there's this HR Plus schema in there, and it has a set of tables. The tables will have data in it. You also see that pgadmin has the ability to inspect advanced server-specific objects like packages. So we can see that package moved over. We can see that there's, there was also views that were moved. I think that plan commission view was one that we looked at. We actually edited, so we can run that view just to verify that it works and get results from that. So we were successfully able to move that database. Much of the stuff just happened under the covers because of Oracle compatibility. So at this point, I'm going to jump back to my presentation. Okay, so we're not quite done with the conversation here. So let's round this out. So you saw a demo, and hopefully that is useful to you, of some of the tools that we have and some of the process involved in that. We had some discussion about our capabilities, Oracle compatibility, as well as deployment options. We saw the use of Big Animal as part of that demo there. And then you always have the option to talk to us about engaging our professional services to help you with your migrations as well. Let's think about, now that you've done a migration, what are the things that you're going to need to be concerned about in the migrated environment, in the post-migration environment? Well, basically, in your operating environment, you're going to have a set of tools and processes that support monitoring and management, backup and recovery, high availability, security and auditing and reporting, all the things that you had to probably do in your Oracle system as well. Also with Postgres, you'll need to think about your minor version updates and possible major version upgrades. Just like in the Oracle days, you would have had to worry about patching your database so that you were making sure that your bug fixes and security fixes were being put in place. Postgres is released on once a year, a major version is released. Every major version is supported for up to 5 years, and each supported major version will have at least 4 minor version updates a year, basically on a quarterly basis. And those minor updates will be what will introduce bug fixes as well as security fixes. There won't be any new major features in it. At a minimum, you will be needing to think about doing minor version updates. They're pretty easy to do in Postgres, unlike with maybe with Oracle, that what you're used to. Major version upgrades takes a little bit more effort, but since the version is supported for 5 years, if you use your Postgres system long term, it's definitely something that you're going to need to think about as well. And at some point, you're going to need to do a major version upgrade. And then finally, to make sure that you can actually run your database and your application, you're going to need trade administrators and users who know how to use Postgres. That's another area that EDB, we offer training services. We also offer some online training as well. So that's an area that we can help you with. If you think about in your Oracle environment, you probably have a set of tools to cover monitoring and management, backup and recovery, high availability, replication. Maybe you have applications that deal with geospatial data. You have auditing requirements. Maybe you need to do some data comparison. There's a set of tools that Oracle makes available, and you may be using those today. And likewise, we have a set of tools. They don't work the same as Oracle's, but they serve the same needs. And we have those sorts of tools and capabilities available both for our on-premise deployments as well as that Big Animal service. Some of the service for Big Animal it's just handled as part of the underlying service itself. So you don't. Some of the tools aren't needed in that case for backup recovery and high availability. Some of that's just handled by the service. So finally, to wrap things up, Just a quick discussion on some best practices. I would say, it's really important that you don't skip or skim over the steps in the migration journey. We took a look at three main stages, and we looked at the of those three stages, we broke that down to nine stages, of which those last eight there, it's really important to kind of focus on those and make sure that you're planning for those appropriately. Make sure that you've identified the resources you need, both to support the migration, but also to support your long-term use of Postgres. And also, um, what we find really important for successful migrations is that you need to get your application developers and your system administrators working with your database teams early on. That's the best way to sort of identify any issues that might exist, both from an infrastructure standpoint, but also from an application standpoint and working with the new database. I think most organizations understand this, but have a dev and test environment so that you practice your migration there before you actually try it in production. And then a thing that often I'm surprised at, like how this becomes an issue, is that organizations sometimes don't have the appropriate environment to test their application under the new database. You want to make sure that you have an environment that closely approximates your production environment. And then there's a set of other recommendations there. Get your people trained. You can look at how you're doing a migration of your data. There's some nuances to that. Also, where you need help, call on people like EDB to help you with those complex migrations. And then, I've covered a lot here, but if you want more details, you could schedule a lunch and learn with us. Just reach out to us via our website, and somebody will get back to you, and they can schedule a deeper discussion with you. Also, you are free to choose to try the migration portal yourself, upload a schema, and do an assessment and see how compatible your schema is. And then, if you want to explore, that further, if there's some complexity associated with it, and you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach out to us, and we can help, with the migration discovery exercise there. And then finally, much of what I've discussed here today is also available in a handbook or an overview document that's available in our EDB docs. And it covers migration considerations, that migration journey, the tools, and also expands upon the compatibility with Oracle and how important that is as well. So with that in mind, I have one little plug for EDB. We are hiring, growing, and if you know folks who are interested in Postgres and working for a great company, please consider us. And finally, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about how we can help you make Oracle migrations easy.